Back in May, the first time I preached here to an empty sanctuary, I was hoping that was the last time I would have to do so. So I began planning this homecoming service then. I picked that song back in May because I was hoping that by September, we would be celebrating our coming together after the quarantine. I was envisioning that we would rejoice in singing this song together. We would say, woohoo, no more lonely days, woohoo, no more lonely days. Of course, that wasn't the case. Still, there is a sense of homecoming. Some of you are coming back after a summer away. Some of you have decided to make this church your home church. Thank you. And for me, it's also a homecoming in many ways. Look at what one of the individuals who make Fountain Street, the Fountain Street campus, his home, look what he made for me. Isn't it great? Thank you, Keith. I am home. I am home in so many ways. Now, because of COVID, because of having to run a mostly virtual church, and because of our vision of Fountain Street Church as a vibrant 21st century spiritual community, we have made some remodeling around here. Not so much the physical space, all of this is temporary. We have made some remodelings to the ways we do church, to the ways we run the organization. In this month's newsletter, I wrote about how after meeting with hundreds of you Fountain Streeters, I came to see that we all have the same vision for Fountain Street, a vision of flourishing. Flourishing. And it's not surprising, I wrote in the newsletter, it's not surprising that we all want Fountain Street Church to flourish, because that is what we desire for the things we love. And we all love Fountain Street Church. So I also created an artwork that is supposed to be on a slide right now, but the slides are not working because the technology is not working, but we flow. This is what life does. We adapt, and here we are adapting. So we ask ourselves, what leads to flourishing? To the flourishing of individuals, the flourishing of communities, and the flourishing of our planet. What leads to flourishing? What leads to flourishing is the reversal of the systems that have caused so much damage to individuals, to communities, and to the planet. The systems of oppression built in within organizations that continue to perpetuate damage to our psyches, to our sense of worth, to our relationships with people who look different from us, and damage to the planet. Are you all as heartbroken as I am by the fires in the West Coast? 3.1 million acres burning in California, Oregon, and Washington. Ancient, giant, sacred, life-giving trees are burning right now. My heart. It is so important that we honor our grief for the earth. It's essential that we honor the pain we feel for everything we are experiencing, like racism, school shootings, police brutality, widespread extinctions. But truly, all is not lost. We can be a part of the change. We are joining a revolution happening across the world, which offers a solution. Some sociologists believe that we are in the midst of a paradigm shift in our society. Just like 10,000 years ago, the domestication of plants and animals led to the agricultural revolution, and how a few hundred years ago, the Industrial Revolution completely changed the way human beings interact with one another and with nature. A shift of similar magnitude is happening right now in our society. Some call this shift the sustainability revolution, which is about creating sustainable lifestyles, organizations, and communities that lead to individual and collective flourishing. Another term for this revolution is the Great Turning, made popular by the eco-philosopher Joanna Macy. I see the Great Turning as a wave that is spreading throughout society at large. A shift from our obsession with industrial growth, a shift from our obsession with industrial growth to a more life-sustaining revolution. This shift, this revolution, this evolution is happening across every section of society. For instance, this week, the Reverend Matthew and I visited a farm a farmer here in Grand Rapids who is practicing regenerative ways to work with the land instead of just exploiting it. One of his methods is moving the farm animals from field to field, which nourishes the land and simulates the way animals move in the wild versus what conventional farmers in Western society have done for centuries, leaving the animals in the same pen for years. In the wild, animals that stay in one place are easy targets for predators and parasites, so they naturally migrate, which keeps the herd moving away from manure and toward fresh food. Brian, the young farmer we visited, is working with the natural flow of life, not against it. Another example of this, and I'll post the slides that were supposed to accompany this later. Another example of this wave of sustainability is the NAP Ministry, a movement started by Tricia Hershey, which promotes rest as a radical tool for community healing. She names sleep deprivation as a racial and social injustice, and believes that rest is a form of resistance. She says, we are constantly told to go harder, grind more, boss up, push through, fake it until you make it, and sleep when you are dead. I'm wondering, she says, where can we find tenderness, softness, alignment, and rest? She also says that capitalism wants your body to be a machine, but you are not a machine. You are a divine human being. You have a right to rest, to listen to the body, to thrive, to heal. End of quote. That leads to flourishing. If we are successful in changing the current self-destructive systems we have in place, and if we are able to implement life-sustaining systems, the future generations will look back and speak of this time of history when we were able to make that shift. What a time to be alive! A time of turmoil, for sure, as systems collapse, but also a time to create, to transform, to evolve. And that excites me. That helps me to get out of bed in the morning. And that is part of the work that we are embarking here at Fountain Street Church. We are joining this wave, this global movement. We are going to do our part because the soulless systems in our modern society have led us to experience a huge spiritual deficit. So many of us are going around with this hole inside ourselves. So many of us are feeling adrift, disconnected from the earth, disconnected from one another, disconnected from spirit, from our very own soul. We want to be part of the change because Fountain Street Church has always been on the leading edge of new and emerging thoughts and ideas. This is what we believe to be the next evolution, the creation of sustainable systems that lead to flourishing, individual flourishing, and collective flourishing. For hundreds of years, liberal religion has made monumental shifts in the religious landscape of this country, and we are grateful for our ancestors. But I believe, we lost something along the way. Some of you have heard me speak of this in one of my books, my favorite books from seminary, called Reason and Reverence. The Reverend William R. Murray writes about the 3 dimensions of religion. First, intellectual, which is about beliefs and doctrines. The second one is affective, which is feelings and emotions. The third one is practical, which is about ethical actions. Liberal religion has largely focused on the first, the intellectual piece, and the third, the practical, leaving us without the experiences to ground us. Liberal religion has been highly intellectual, giving priority to the mind. It is no wonder that the first line in our motto here is free the mind. And I have nothing against the mind. In fact, I just took a Harry Potter sorting hat quiz online, and guess which house I'm in? Hold on, I'm not gonna tell you, I'm not gonna tell you. If you're watching this live, go ahead and type the answer on the chat box. Which Harry Potter house do you think I'm in? Or you can email me later. We're gonna see how many people are correct. So, nothing against the mind. In fact, I'm preaching on it next week and the week after. So tune in at 10 a.m. Next week on the 20th and the 27th. Shameless self-promotion, I know. But liberal religion, as it moved away from Catholicism, as it moved away from traditional denominations like Catholicism, left behind the rituals and practices that nourish the soul, that connect us with something larger than the self, that center us, that brings us back home, home to an unshakable core of peace at the center of our being. So we will be reclaiming and creating rituals that reach a part of the brain that words alone cannot reach. We will be implementing practices that put us in alignment with what matters most, which is peace, which is love, which is community, which is soul, which is life, which is the larger whole of which we are all a part. That leads to flourishing. Since the Great Turning is about reversing the systems in place which have caused a culture of separation, we now go back to reconnection, which is, by the way, the root word for religion, religare, reconnect. We go back to connecting to one another, to nature, to ourselves, to our feelings, to our bodies, not just the intellect. So yes, this year at Fountain Street Church, we are bringing more teachings and practices and activities to bring us back home and reconnect us. So, you know, when people like me in this country are often asked the same question, almost every day, everywhere I go, people who look like me are asked the same question. Where is home? Where is home? And I don't want to get all philosophical on them, but I truly want to say home for me is not a physical place. Home is relational. As one of my favorite teachers, the Zen master Dogen, once said, enlightenment is intimacy with all things. Enlightenment is intimacy with everything, including our feelings, including our bodies, including the transcendence. Intimacy with all things. Again, I have nothing against the mind, but our overemphasis on it is too limiting to the full spectrum of our being, to our spaciousness inside. It is too limiting to the depth and breadth of the religious experience. One of my favorite definitions of religion come from the German Lutheran theologian Rudolf Otto, who says that religion consists of a profound awareness of a sense of mystery to which one responds with awe and wonder. Religion consists of a profound awareness of a sense of mystery to which we respond with awe and wonder. I want more of that. Experiences of awe have so many benefits that I'm writing a whole sermon on it. Awe diminishes the sense of self. It shrinks the ego while expanding our worldview. Awe is linked to altruism. Various studies have found that participants who reported experiencing more awe in their lives were more generous to the stranger, giving approximately 40% more than those who are awe deprived. Yes, all deprivation is a thing. And you know what else is amazing? Let me show you let me show you my shirt. Amazing. You know what else is amazing? Experiencing awe is not only good for our spirits, but it's also good for our health. Again, another sermon. Regardless of your belief about God, the experiences of awe are essential for our flourishing. And awe is a full body experience, not just intellectual. That's why we want a holistic church experience. And our vision here is that every area of church life uses a model that cares for the need of the whole person, a model that leads to the flourishing of the whole individual, a model that takes into consideration not just our psychological well-being, but our spiritual well-being, our physical well-being, as well as our social well-being. We are whole beings and we will be divided no more. We are practicing wholeness at Fountain Street Church. That leads to flourishing. We are taking this model into consideration for every service we intentionally create and every program as well. We are also using this framework, this other framework, which also leads to flourishing because it goes just from information to integration. And let me run you through that. So first we have information, that's something of the mind. But if we don't do anything with that information that comes in, nothing happens. It stays there or it's forgotten. Then when the information moves down to the heart, we have inspiration. That's good. That's real good. But what is better is when that information that has inspired us so deeply, when we implement it, when we put it into practice, that's when we actually integrate it. Like the promises from the chapel community about creating a life of deeper meaning and greater value, but it takes practice. It takes practice. Once we move from information to inspiration to implementation, now we have integrated the information into our system. Now we actually embody it. And how is that for intimacy? To be so intimate with an idea to the point of becoming it. I am so excited about our future becomings. After this information comes down to the heart and inspires us, and then we implement it, and then we integrate it. Speaking of the body, can I share one of the saddest stories that my heart carries regarding the human body? Having been born in Cuba, where I grew up dancing from a very young age, I'm always saddened when people in this country say that they can dance. But they say it in such a way as if they have been born that way. And I was just different because I was born in Cuba. The sad truth is that in the 25 years I have lived in this country, every festival I go to, when the music starts playing, the toddlers begin dancing with such delight, with such freedom, with such joy, with such abandon. And my heart breaks. How long, I ask myself, how long before they become self-conscious? Before they are told in so many ways that there is something shameful about moving the body in joyful ways? How much longer before they lose that joy, that freedom they carry within? At Fountain Street Church, we are offering 3 main experiences to minister to the needs of the whole individual. First is this Sunday morning live experience at 10 a.m., where the main teaching of the week takes place. Then we have the deepening experience, a small group gathering where we go deeper into the teachings from that Sunday. We come together to discuss and process the information we learned together. This begins next Sunday, right after the service via Zoom. Then on Wednesday evenings, it's all about the practices that lead to flourishing. We are offering the grounding experience led by the Reverend Matthew, who is our Minister for Spiritual Care and Practice. We hope you join us for some of these experiences designed intentionally to move from information to integration to transformation. In addition, since part of this work of reconnection is healing our relationship with nature, we are looking for ways to do that here. That's why Reverend Matthew and I visited the farm this week. We want to create experiences in nature for the whole congregation, including our children, because as David Suzuki once said, unless we are willing to encourage our children to reconnect with and appreciate the natural world, we can't expect them to help protect and care for it. So I say this to the children watching today and to the families of all sizes. Can we please go camping soon, please? Not now because of COVID, but maybe in the spring, please? So that leads to flourishing. Something else we inherited from our liberal tradition is our obsession with words. Say this person who's obsessed with words. But part of the renovations here is about bringing more visuals into the services and our programming, because we know that we live in a visual information age. And we know that our brains are incredible at remembering images. If you hear one piece of information today, 3 days from now, you will remember 10% of it. If you hear a piece of information today, in 3 days, you will only remember 10% of it. But if you add an image to that information, you will remember 65% of it. The source of that is the New York Times best-selling book, Brain Rules. Our brains love images, and using images during worship help us to connect with the message in deeper ways, and it activates our emotional responses. That leads to flourishing. The renovations here were needed for various reasons, but also because we know the importance of adaptation. As H.G. Wells famously said in 1945, we either adapt or perish. That is nature's imperative. Religious affiliations continue to drop across every denomination. You see the drop in the charts. Because religion, traditional religion, is not serving the modern needs for truth and meaning of a large percentage of the population. During this time of upheaval, how do we continue to make meaning from the world around us? How do we find certainty in an uncertain world? The news cycle is unbearable. The world feels shaky. The despair is pervasive. How do we find meaning? By reconnecting. As one of my favorite songs goes, you know it. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return to who you are. Return to what you are. Return to where you are, born and reborn again. That is the constant practice of returning home. Home to an unshakable core of peace at the center of our being. And I want to know, what is at that core? What is that source of peace, that transcendent mystery? We at Fountain Street Church will never stop exploring the many names of that mystery and the many practices that lead us to it, that reconnect us to it. That leads to flourishing. May it be so.